Tsukui Gar. Greetings, I am Tad Larkin, the Lore Master of Mandalore, and today I'll be digging through the archives to elaborate on every Mandalore that ever lived. Throughout galactic history, the semi-nomadic warlike beings known as the Mandalorians have had many chieftains that led their people to conquest and victory. These individuals are known as the Mandalores, the Grand Chieftains. It is important to note that the Mandalorians, even though they possessed a system of writing, did not typically keep written historical records. Most of their history and traditions were passed down orally, so there will be massive time gaps due to incomplete records as I go through each of the Mandalores. We begin circa 7,000 years before the Battle of Yavin, when the beings known as the Tong had spent millennia wandering the galaxy, following their exile from their native Coruscant. Stumbling upon a lush green world in the Outer Rim, the Tong named it Mandalore, after their chieftain, Te Solish Mandalore, otherwise known as Mandalore I. Among Mandalore I's accomplishments, the settling of Mandalore and the hunting of its native predator, the Mythosaurs, to extinction are the chiefest. It is also believed that Mandalore I was also the founder of the Mandalorian Crusaders, however, that's greatly disputed. Sometime between 7000 BBY and 9996 BBY, Mandalore the Conqueror took up the mask of the Mandalore. It was he who galactic historians argue that actually established the Mandalorian Crusaders, a group of Mandalorian warriors who prided themselves in raiding and conquering neighboring worlds for the glory of war and to appease their heathen gods. During Mandalore the Conqueror's unspecified reign, he expanded Mandalorian territory considerably through his crusades and accrued valuable resources. Sometime before 3996 BBY, a new Mandalore took up the mask, and he would soon become known as Te Kandosi Mandalore, or Mandalore the Indomitable. He earned the title by leading numerous successful crusades early in his reign, such as the Battle of Basilisk, where he and his forces utterly devastated the world and stole many Basilisk war droids from their conquered foes. He also wiped out the Nevuda species at the Battle of Nevuda. Apart from his conquests, Mandalore the Indomitable also made great reforms to the Mandalorian way of life. As legend states, it was on the newly conquered world of Shogun that Mandalore the Indomitable had an epiphany. Instead of worshipping the old gods, Mandalore the Indomitable put forth that the Mandalorians should now worship the art of war itself, and thus began to outline the canons of honor, which were guidelines on how the Mandoade should conduct themselves. Next, Mandalore the Indomitable targeted the Empress Teta system in the deep core, and he and his warriors with their Basilisk war mounts began battering the system's craft defenders. The fallen Jedi Ulic Qel-Droma, who had recently gained command of the Krath forces occupying the system, challenged Mandalore the Indomitable to a one-on-one duel, to which he agreed, and on the Mandalorian-held world of Kuar, Qel-Droma bested the Mandalore. Instead of ending Mandalore the Indomitable's shame, Ulic decided to spare him, but he and his Mandalorian Crusaders were now under Ulic's direction, and together, Mandalorian and Krath forces attacked Forost and Coruscant during the subsequent Great Sith War. It was at the end of the Great Sith War that Mandalore the Indomitable was sent to capture Onderon from the Republic. However, Onderonian defense forces managed to rout the Mandalorians, and they retreated to Onderon's moon, Dejun. It was on Dejun that Mandalore the Indomitable's Basilisk war droid was shot down, and he was overcome by predators who killed and ate the wounded chieftain. What little remained of Mandalore the Indomitable was found by a lone Mandalorian Crusader, who dusted off and donned Mandalore's mask, becoming the new Mandalore. Te Anila Mandalore, more commonly Mandalore the Ultimate, reigned from 3996 BBY to 3960 BBY, and is widely regarded as one of the most ruthless Mandalores to have ever held the title. Eager to recuperate the Mandalorians' numbers from the disastrous Great Sith War, Mandalore the Ultimate set up a training facility on Dejun, and began to expand the Mandalorian culture to encompass not just the Tong, who were dying off in increasing numbers, but numerous other species as well. Anyone willing and tough enough could now join up with the Mandalorians if they possessed the metal. Mandalore the Ultimate also founded a sub-organization within the Mandalorians, known as the Mandalorian Neo-Crusaders. Led by his chief lieutenant, Cassus Fett, the Neo-Crusaders were an elite group of soldiers, differentiated from the regular Crusaders by standardized color-coded armor. They wielded heavier weapons as well, and were generally tougher than the standard Grunt Crusader. All was soon in place for Mandalore the Ultimate's planned invasion of the Republic. He would make his crusade the greatest Mandalorian crusade the galaxy had ever seen, when emissaries from the Sith Empire in hiding approached Mandalore the Ultimate and tried to coax him into doing what he was already planning on doing anyways. With his numbers growing and backing from the Sith Empire hiding out in wild space, Mandalore the Ultimate launched a series of border skirmishes to test the Republic's strength, lasting from 3,976 BBY to 3,965 BBY, and, satisfied with the Republic's meager responses, began more serious invasions in 3,964 BBY. By 3,963 BBY, Mandalore the Ultimate's Crusaders had begun a no-holds-bar onslaught into Republic space, invading worlds such as Vanquo, Serja, Sirocco, Onderon, and Terrace, to name a few. And by 3,962 BBY, the Mandalorians had cut a swath in much of the galactic northeastern quadrant, and over a quarter of the Republic's territory, making it even into the core worlds as they attacked Duro and Corellia. Victory seemed near for Mandalore the Ultimate. Fed up with the Jedi Order's stance of neutrality and seeming contentedness to let the Republic fall to the Mandalorians, a splinter group of Jedi, led by a human male named Revan, joined up with the Republic forces and aided them in numerous counter-assaults against the Mandalorians. From 3,961 BBY to 3,960 BBY, Revan led the Republic war effort, and they beat the Mandalorians all the way back to Malachor V in the Outer Rim, where he faced off in a duel with Mandalore the Ultimate, killing him and unleashing the mass shadow generator that destroyed Malachor V and a majority of the Mandalorians, scattering the survivors. After Mandalore the Ultimate's death, Revan took his mask, which had been an heirloom of every Mandalore since Mandalore I, and hid it, splintering the Mandalorians and effectively dooming them to be leaderless and ununited. Sometime during the Jedi Civil War, which lasted from 3,959 BBY to 3,956 BBY, one of the last surviving Tong tried to claim the title of Mandalore, despite not possessing Mandalore's mask. This unidentified Mandalore, who I've personally designated Mandalore the Pretender, didn't accomplish much in his relatively short reign. He raided Kashyyyk and used a reprogrammed HK-series assassin droid to kill his rivals, before dying in the company of a man named Canderous Ordo. Tay Talir Mandalore, or simply Mandalore the Preserver, informally known as Canderous Ordo, was the first human to take the title of Mandalore, and he would reign from 3,954 BBY until his death at an unknown date. A hardened veteran of the Mandalorian Wars turned bounty hunter, Canderous Ordo was aided by a redeemed Revan, who he had in turn helped defeat his former apprentice, Darth Malak, and destroy the Star Forge during the Jedi Civil War some years earlier, on a quest to find Mandalore's mask. With Revan's memories slowly returning, he and Canderous found Mandalore's mask on the Outer Rim world of Rekkade, where it was hidden within the sarcophagus of the Sith Lord Dramath II. Integrating the mask into his new battle armor he acquired from the dying Mandalore the Pretender, Canderous Ordo became the new Mandalore and set about trying to reunite the scattered Mandalorian clan. Now Mandalore the Preserver, Canderous returned to the former Mandalorian training grounds on Dejun, and upon hearing of the return of the true Mandalore, many Mandalorians flocked to Dejun to be united under the mask once again. As he continued to find and reunite the scattered Mandalorian clans, Ordo found himself aiding a young Jedi, Mitra Surik, in a quest of her own, to find the former Jedi Masters in hiding in the wake of a great Jedi purge set about by the Sith Triumvirate led by Darth Nihilus. Mandalore the Preserver would go on to lead his Mondo Ade in the heroic Battle of Telos IV, where he personally boarded Nihilus's flagship and aided Mitra Surik in defeating the Lord of Hunger, and subsequently helping her defeat Darth Traya at Malachor V, despite his reluctance to return there. As Mandalore the Preserver, Canderous Ordo would reclaim much of the Mandalore sector, as well as the Mandalorians' lost glory. He died in battle sometime before 3667 BBY. In 3681 BBY, the Sith Empire hiding in wild space revealed itself to the Republic in a string of surprise attacks, culminating in the Great Galactic War, and instrumental to their success in this conflict was the puppet Mandalore, Mandalore the Lesser. A young fighter in the gladiator arenas on Geonosis, Mandalore the Lesser ascended to the title following his sponsorship by the Sith Empire, in which Sith agents routinely rigged gladiator matches to ensure that the Mandalore won every time, attracting the respect and eventually the leadership of the Mandalorians. Mandalore the Lesser proved far more responsive to Sith influence than his predecessors, the overambitious Mandalore the Ultimate and the Republic-allied Mandalore the Preserver, and at their bidding, he and his Mandalorians attacked Republic worlds, as well as blockaded the entire Hydian Way hyperlane, cutting off vital supplies to the core worlds. After the Mandalorian blockade was broken and the Treaty of Coruscant was signed between the Sith Empire and the Republic, Mandalore the Lesser traveled to Dijon, where he called the best Mandalorians in the galaxy to compete in a great hunt to raise morale. The champion of this great hunt, Artus Locke, challenged Mandalore the Lesser to a duel, which resulted in him killing Mandalore the Lesser and claiming the title for himself. Mandalore the Vindicated, aka Artus Locke, reigned from 3653 BBY to around 3632 BBY, and continued to be allied with the Sith Empire, despite the death of the puppet Mandalore. After consolidating power, a schism arose within the clans, as some Mandalorians believed support should be given to the Republic, as it was in the days of Mandalore the Preserver. Mandalore the Vindicated, however, saw this as a threat, and quickly squashed an uprising led by Jacoln Cadera. Under Mandalore the Vindicated, the Mandalorians prospered, being well-paid mercenaries for the Sith Empire, and when hostilities resumed between the Sith and the Republic, he remained loyal to the Sith, even through Darth Malgus's coup and the onslaught of the Eternal Empire of Zakuul from deep wild space. It was during a battle with the Eternal Empire that Mandalore the Vindicated fell, leaving the Mandalorians leaderless and cut off from their allies. Mandalore the Avenger, informally known as Shae Vizsla, was reluctant to claim the title in 3632 BBY, when the clans unanimously chose her, already herself an accomplished bounty hunter and respected soldier, to lead them through the troubling time of the Galactic War. At this time, her clan was stuck in the core worlds and cut off from the rest of Mandalorian forces by an Eternal Empire blockade, and Mandalore the Avenger threw in her lot with the Republic and Sith Empire, forging a shaky alliance known as the Eternal Alliance against the Eternal Empire of Zakuul. Together with the Republic and the Sith, Mandalore the Avenger led her Mondo Ade to victory and helped topple the Eternal Empire. Mandalore the Avenger would keep the Mandalorians as part of the doomed-to-fragment Eternal Alliance, even after hostilities resumed between the Sith Empire and the Republic. Following her successful reign, future Mandalores after Mandalore the Avenger would be chosen by their peers, rather than them forcibly taking the title from the previous Mandalore as had been done in the past. The tradition of passing down the mask would also die out sometime after Mandalore the Preserver. These next two Mandalores have no hard dates associated with their reigns. However, given an almost 2,000-year gap between Mandalore the Avenger and Ung Cusp's reigns, I view this time period as a likely time that these Mandalores could have held leadership over the clans. Mandalore the Hammerborn grew up as an orphan, living on the streets on the Outer Rim world of Kol Atorn, where he frequently overheard conversations spoken by a community of Mandalorians living there. Listening to them, he taught himself how to speak Mondoa, and eventually gained their friendship. Growing up with this community of Mandalorians gained him venerability and respect from other Mandalorians later in his life, and he eventually became Mandalore. Mandalore the Binder grew up as a rug weaver on the backwater world of Harsui. How he rose up to earn the title is unknown, however his humble beginnings are fondly remembered. Mandalore Ung Cusp reigned circa 1500 BBY during the height of the millennia-long conflict known as the New Sith Wars. We know little about Ung Cusp, except that he was betrayed at some point by one of his Mandalorian subjects by the name of Jang, and he had him killed, much to the chagrin of the Jedi bounty hunter he mentored, Dirge. Towards the end of the New Sith Wars, a Mandalorian mercenary by the name of Aga Awade earned the title, and was deemed Mandalore the Uniter. After returning to Mandalore following campaigns during the New Sith Wars, Aga found that the entire Mandalore sector was running rampant with foreign raiders, and most of his clan had been wiped out by a plague. The Mandalore called his clans for aid, and from every corner of the galaxy and on distant battlefronts throughout the war, Mandalorians heeded the call of their Mandalore and helped liberate the sector and reclaim their ancient home. Around 132 BBY, another unnamed Mandalore held the title, and since he was only known for being murdered by the aforementioned Jedi bounty hunter Dirge, who at this point had developed a healthy hatred for Mandalorians following the death of his mentor Jang, I deem him Mandalore the Murdered. Sometime after, a charismatic Mandalorian named Rana Tay Nast was bestowed the title of Mandalore, and it was her particular ruthlessness in battle that earned her the honorific Mandalore the Destroyer. During the famous siege of Luan, she spoke with the city leaders and made it abundantly clear the strength, ruggedness, and tenacity of the Mandalorians, and why they could never be truly exterminated by an outside force. Just before offering one final chance to surrender, they didn't, and Mandalore the Destroyer did what she did best. From 60 BBY to 52 BBY, Jaster Meriel reigned as the Mandalore, and he oversaw the brutal Mandalorian civil war that would claim his life. Once a journeyman protector on the agricultural world of Concord Dawn in the Mandalore sector, Jaster Meriel was accused of murder and fled to Mandalore in exile. Once there, he took up mercenary work and gained notoriety and respect as a good soldier and honorable man. When he was offered up to serve as Mandalore, Jaster was disappointed with what the Mandalorians had become, and set about making drastic reforms. The Mandalorians at this point had largely become raiders and pirates, preying on shipping that came through the sector and harassing settlements on neighboring worlds for sport, and Jaster wished to bring honor back to the Mandalorians by laying down his Super Commando Codex. Many praised his Super Commando Codex, which basically told the Mandalorians to smarten up and seek mercenary work, instead of attacking innocent non-combatants out of boredom, and they dubbed him the Al-Ori Ramakad, Commander of Super Commandos. Some, however, rather liked piracy and attacking non-combatants for fun, the chiefest of whom was Tor Vizsla, who founded his own Mandalorian sub-faction, the Death Watch, that operated under the false pretenses that they wanted to restore the Mandalorians to their former glory under Mandalore the Ultimate from thousands of years earlier. This, however, was just a front for piracy and to gain more recruits. The Mandalorian Civil War broke out in 60 BBY between Jaster's true Mandalorians and Vizsla's Death Watch, and spilled out from Mandalore over to Concord Dawn, where Jaster adopted a young, recently orphaned Concordian named Jango Fett, who would grow over the years to become one of Jaster's trusted lieutenants. Years later, at the Battle of Corda 6 in 52 BBY, the true Mandalorians came under a Death Watch ambush, and Jango's squad was separated from Jaster's, and being betrayed by another trusted lieutenant, Montross, Jaster was gunned down by Tor Vizsla. Jango Fett would hold the title of Mandalore from 52 BBY to 44 BBY, following the death of his adopted father and mentor, Jaster Meriel, at the disastrous Battle of Corda 6. Holding the dying Jaster Muriel in his arms, the new Mandalore vowed to destroy the Death Watch and kill Tor Vizsla personally, and Jango would continue to lead the true Mandalorians in many battles against the Death Watch. On the frozen world of Galadran, Jango caught whiff of the Death Watch and demanded to the local governor that he reveal their whereabouts, to which he agreed only after Jango and the true Mandalorians agreed to wipe out a group of rebels opposing his rule, to which they did. However, the whole thing was a setup, as the governor was in cahoots with Tor Vizsla. The rebels that the true Mandalorians had neutralized were played off as innocent protesters to the Republic Senate, who swiftly set a Jedi task force led by Master Dooku to subdue the perceived Mandalorian bullies. Dooku offered Jango and the true Mandalorians a chance to surrender, to which they refused because they did nothing wrong, and the ensuing battle was a disaster for the true Mandalorians. Jango ended up being one of only 2 survivors, not before he killed 5 Jedi himself. With his captivity and enslavement, Jango Fett's reign as the Mandalore effectively ended, but that didn't stop him from escaping captivity, reclaiming his armor, and defeating the remnants of the Death Watch, personally sparring with Vizsla on Corellia to the death. Jango would never return to Mandalore, but he would go on to be one of the best bounty hunters of his time, even winning a contest against other bounty hunters, including his former colleague Montross, to hunt down a crazed death stick dealer and dark Jedi, Kamari Vosa, for the prize of 5 million credits from a former Jedi turned Sith Lord, Count Dooku. Dooku offered Jango the chance not just to be a prime template for a clone army, but revenge against the Jedi, as said clone army would eventually be used against them, making Order 66 effectively Jango's revenge for Galadran. He accepted on the condition that he could keep 1 clone for himself as a son and protege. Mandalore the Resurrector reigned from 21 BBY to 19 BBY, and is credited for attempting to bring together the Mandalorians at the height of the Clone Wars. Born just some 11 years earlier, Alpha Theta 2, or SPAR for short, was a clone of Jango Fett, bred to be an advanced recon clone commando within the Grand Army of the Republic, and one of a few arcs trained by Jango Fett himself. During his training on Kamino, Spar became friends with one of the Mandalorian training sergeants, Midge Gillamar, who taught him about the Mandalorian culture and history, and upon hearing Jango's exploits during the Civil War, Spar began having triggered memories that weren't his own, and suffered from severe PTSD from them, causing the Kaminoans to believe that he was defective, and scheduled him for reconditioning, or euthanasia more accurately. Midge called in a favor from Jango, and had Spar smuggled off-world to Mandalore, where, a few years later, he befriended a young man named Fen Shisa, who was looking for a way to reunite the Mandalorians during the troubling time of the Clone Wars, and upon meeting Spar, he quickly recognized the opportunity to have Spar as the new Mandalore, posing as Jango Fett's son. Boba was around 13 or 14 at this time, as he believed only another man as great as Fett could do it. Fen began parading him around as Jango Fett's son, and eventually, after some prodding and fueled by Jango's memories of Galadran and his distaste for the Republic and the Jedi, he reluctantly accepted the title of Mandalore and set about creating a sub-faction of Mandalorians called the Mandalorian Protectors. Not all Mandalorians came when this new Mandalore called. However, a fair amount of Kaldalbe law enforcers, as well as former Mandalorian Death Watch members, came to join the Protectors, and, throwing in their lot with the Confederacy of Independent Systems, the Mandalorian Protectors attacked Republic forces on Noo, New Holstis, Kamino, and New Bornolix. At the disastrous Battle of Norval II, all of the Mandalorian Protectors, save for Spar, Fen Shisa, and Toby Dalla, were slaughtered by clone forces, and upon returning to Mandalore, Spar relinquished the title. Fen Shisa took up the title of Mandalore in 19 BBY, and would reign from then to 21 years after the Battle of Yavin. Before reluctantly accepting the title, Shisa continuously pushed for Spar to be Mandalore again, to which he was utterly done, after the disastrous battles during the Clone Wars. So, he set his sights on a few other ARC troopers and clone commandos that deserted the GAR after the war, and took up with Kal Skirata to find a cure for their accelerated aging. The overprotective Skirata was adamant that he didn't want any of his adopted clone sons to take up the title. After the newly formed Galactic Empire began setting up a military presence on Mandalore, Fen Chisa was increasingly worried for the safety of his fellow Mondo Ade, and finally took up the title, if only for a little while to keep the seat warm for someone he thought could lead them better, Jango's true son, Boba Fett. As the Empire's presence on Mandalore grew from wanting to secure mining rights to the planet's valuable Beskar to full-on enslavement of the Mandalorian populace to mine it for them, Mandalore Fen Chisa led an underground resistance against the Empire's tyranny to hopefully someday free Mandalore. That day came in 3 ABY, following the arrival of Princess Leia during her search for Boba Fett, who had taken Han Solo, frozen in carbonite, from Cloud City on Bespin. And with her help, Chisa and the resistance movement overthrew the Imperial presence on Mandalore and freed the people. With the Mandalorians freed and their traditional armor and weapons returned to them, Mandalore Fen Chisa reorganized the Mandalorian Protectors, and they were able to liberate much of the Mandalore sector from Imperial Grand Admiral Mitlin Tackle. Grateful for the aid given during the reclaiming of Mandalore, Fen Chisa and the Mandalorian Protectors threw in their lot with the Rebel Alliance, and helped them during the interim year between the Empire's devastating defeat at the Battle of Endor in 4 ABY, and the reorganizing of the Alliance into the New Republic in 5 ABY. The last engagement where Chisa and the Protectors fought side by side with the New Republic was at Mindor against Imperial Warlord Lord Shadowspawn. However, after the battle, they returned to Mandalore to focus on rebuilding their world after nearly 2 decades under Imperial occupation. Towards the end of Chisa's reign, Boba Fett was contracted to kill him, and tracked Chisa down to the planet Shogun in the Quentz sector. However, they were both ambushed by a group of mercenaries, and Fen was mortally wounded while saving Boba Fett's life, and his dying wish to the bounty hunter was for him to finally accept the title his father once held. Boba Fett, one of the most ruthless bounty hunters of his age, reigned as Mandalore of the Mandalorians from 23 ABY to sometime after 40 ABY. In truth, Boba never really thought of himself as much of a Mandalorian, and apart from what his father and the Mandalorian training sergeants he grew up around had told him, he knew very little of them. However, he traveled to Mandalore to attempt to fulfill Fen Chisa's dying wish. Upon arrival, he was greeted with much reverence and respect by the older Mandos that had served with Chisa, and after partially being pressured into it and partially enjoying some of the nostalgic feelings that reminded him of his father, Fett reluctantly accepted the title of Mandalore. When the Yuuzhan Vong War broke out in 25 ABY, the Vong made an agreement with Fett. Admiring how little industrialized Mandalore had remained, and respecting their warrior culture, the Yuuzhan Vong would leave the Mandalore sector alone if Fett and the Mandos agreed to fight with them against the New Republic, to which Fett agreed. However, he secretly fed intel to the New Republic the entire time. Towards the end of the war, the Vong finally caught whiff of Fett's treachery, and as punishment for secretly aiding the New Republic since the beginning of the war, the Vong conducted an all-out assault on Mandalore. However, Mandalore Boba Fett led the Mondo Ade to victory against the extragalactic invaders, but at a massive cost. Fett would lead the Mandalorians to subsequent victories, such as at the liberation of Ord Mantell. During the Second Galactic Civil War in 40 ABY, Mandalore was still struggling to recover from the battle during the Yuuzhan Vong War, until a new vein of Beskar was discovered, and Fett negotiated alliance with the Verpine of Roche and commissioned new starfighters, the Besalik class. Fett would also play a part in training Jaina Solo, daughter of Leia and Han Solo, in Mandalorian fighting styles to kill her brother, Jacen Solo, who had taken over half of the Galactic Alliance and turned to the dark side of the Force, as well as killing Fett's daughter, Aelin Bell. Mandalore Boba Fett would continue to lead the Mandalorians after the Second Galactic Civil War, and worked closely with the new Galactic Alliance Chief of State, former Imperial Admiral Natasi Dalla, as hired muscle during some strife with Luke Skywalker's Jedi Order, though he would mostly take a back seat to his granddaughter, Mirta Gave. Chernin Ordo served as Mandalore sometime around 127 ABY and led the Mandalorians during the opening of the Sith Imperial War. At the Battle of Botejef, Mandalore Chernin Ordo and his Mandalorians were contracted to defend the world against the Fel Empire. However, he quickly found himself cut off and being overrun by stormtroopers. With his communications sabotaged by the treacherous Yaga Aux, Chernin Ordo fell during the battle before Galactic Alliance reinforcements waiting for his signal could come to bolster his defenses. Usurping the title from Chernin Ordo, Mandalore Yaga Aux served as Mandalore from 127 ABY to an unspecified date. After sabotaging the hyperwave transceiver that the Mandalorians were using to communicate with their Galactic Alliance employers, Yaga Aux allowed Mandalore Chernin Ordo and his men to be surrounded and overrun by Fel Imperial forces, allowing him to become the new Mandalore. Upon taking up the title, Yaga pulled the remaining Mandalorians off Botejef and returned to Mandalore, where he kept the Mandalorians out of the war for its remainder, at the behest of his master, presumably the Sith Lord Darth Krayt. This ends my findings on Mandalorian leaders. If you have any suggestions for future transmissions, don't be afraid to drop a comment. In the meantime, keep your comm channels open for future transmissions, and don't forget to subscribe. Tad Larkin, out.